on this computer. Oh, perfect. It's cool. So, first of all, thanks for everyone to jumping on board for this webinar. Specifically, the reason why I brought this to attention, this topic, talking about the future of youth sport and youth athlete development, was, kids sports or youth sport has taken a huge hit. And specifically today, there was a media article released by the Sydney Morning Herald saying about 70,000 clubs across the country are actually in jeopardy. And it's going to take roughly $1.6 billion to keep all these clubs afloat. So we are potentially going to see a huge hit and a huge loss of local sporting clubs that aren't able to actually be able to move forward and actually be able to look after kids. Like, we're going to see the youth sporting landscape and local sporting landscape actually begin to shift. And that's more from a national perspective. But I wanted to bring Dean into the conversation today. Dean Jones, he was actually nominated, if I get the details. He was awarded the 2020 City of Greater Dandenong Sportsperson of the Year. Previously, I've done a little bit of work with him when I was at Frankston Dolphins VFL club, and Dean has actually had other pursuits within the local community, working with some local cricket teams as well, and some junior footballers with a one-on-one football program. For myself, I've done numerous years of working within the health and fitness industry. I am a youth mentor myself, done numerous presentations about youth mentoring and youth athlete development. I've done an internship at the University of Wisconsin, working with their Olympic sports program. And just recently, we've actually been able to open, it's 1 year from last week to actually open Inner Athlete, which is our boutique strength conditioning business. And recently, we were just awarded Boutique Business of the Year by Fitness Australia. So I guess, Dean, I want you to introduce yourself a little bit more, kind of elaborate, and we'll get this conversation rolling.
Thanks, Trent. Thanks, everybody, for having me tonight. It's a great opportunity to, I guess, touch base with Inner Athlete and their clients, and also parents in general, about how we're all going in this current climate. Trent touched on my background with him in the VFL at Frankston. I've also worked with the St Kilda and Sandringham football clubs in the VFL, so had the opportunity to coach elite athletes on game day, a junior coordinator of a cricket club of over 100 kids, a junior coach. I do private cricket and AFL coaching, and have also created multicultural and Indigenous programs. So for me, it's all about the connection, inspiring young people to feel a part of something, and that's the premise of everything I do, just a massive advocate for people and clubs in general.
Unreal. So I think from my specific perspective, I know that I love sport. I love seeing youth sport kind of flourish, and a lot of our clientele at Inner Athlete are actually, they play junior and youth sport, and some of them are actually in representative programs as well. To see kind of that really stripped away, then you've also got the impact of high school or even primary school just going through this rocky roller coaster at the moment. We understand that this potential development phase is really critical, and it's kind of missing at the moment. So how do we kind of, I guess, the cliche pivot kids into, all right, we can't play sport, we know that for sure, but what are some of the other avenues, or what are the other focuses can we move towards in order to at least get some level of development? But when this does finish up, or this pandemic, actually we move on from this pandemic, because it will happen eventually, how can we get them moving in the best light possible, to make sure that A, they're still thriving post this, and B, can still continue to develop themselves throughout this whole period as well. So I want to get the first person we're going to bring into the conversation. So the way this will kind of work is, if you have asked us a question, we really appreciate that when you registered for the webinar. So Christina, what we'll do is we'll bring you into the conversation, and we'll see if we can get your video on as well. And I want you to just kind of ask your question, and we'll kind of go from there. All right, let's see if we get Christina. All right. If that's not going to work, we might come back. All right, I think Christina, we might have lost you for a moment. But please, Christine, if you hear us, just chuck into the chat when you're ready, and we'll get you back on. But we'll move the conversation on to Sylvana Sissing, or Michael Sissing. Apologies if I got your surname wrong. So we'll get the Sissing on board. Thank you. If you chuck your video on, so we know who we're talking to. There we go. So, well, first of all, welcome to the conversation, Michael. I know you're an acquaintance of Dean Jones. I guess I want you to ask your question first, then we can have a bit of a conversation around it.
Yeah, sure. So I was just sort of wanting to know what activities could we do with the kids at home just to keep their skills developing while we're in lockdown now as well. So are there any sort of skills or activities that you guys can recommend to just enhance their skills?
Cool. And before we answer the question, how old are your kids?
So one's 10 and one's 7.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll let Dean answer this first.
Thanks, mate. How you going?
Good. How are you, Dave?
Not too bad. That's a very good question. It's very challenging, as we all know at the moment. My first port of call would be to touch base with your in-season club. So would it be baseball in this instance that I'm referring to?
Well, winter, we've kind of tried a few different sports over the last few winters. So we've kind of done basketball and tennis, and so I wouldn't necessarily say that they've got a regular winter sport. Summer's got the 2-for-1 where we juggle baseball and cricket. So winter not so much. We don't have too much of a winter sport. So Ethan started doing a bit of AFL, but then that lasted a few weeks before it all got shut down again.
Gotcha. So for me, the first port of call would be to touch base with your in-season club. Failing that, there are a lot of adequate resources around that you can certainly tap into, and as an extension from there are some private coaches who can provide the necessary engagement for your particular child. So as an example, my boys are missing out on 7 to 8 hours of AFL football a week. How can I replace that? I'm not going to do the Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. What I can do, and it's almost like a time management philosophy, I can chunk, block and tackle. I can break that down to 1 hour on a Sunday to replicate similar to their game day. They can touch the footies as much in 1 hour as they could in 7 to 8 hours during their regular training week. So what we're trying to do is find a silver lining whereby it's a positive habit. It's a reference point that on a Sunday we're going to be creating a particular program. And what's important is to have the kids use their imagination and actually create the program with you. Okay, so I'll use your 2 boys as an example with the cricket. The Junior Blasters preparation is free play for 20 minutes. So if you put out a bat, some stumps, some different size balls, they might go, Dad, let's play some dodgeball. They might go, let's play some catch, throw the stumps down. So it's almost a case of planting that seed of, here's the equipment. Boys, how did you want to go about it? What do you want to make out of this?
Yeah, okay.
And that for me right now is certainly working. The boys love the concept of it's a check-in every Sunday. We're doing our hours footy. We're touching the footies a lot. They get to create the program. I add a little structure to it, but predominantly they've got the autonomy to drive how much and what they want to do, which hopefully takes off the edge of the anxiety and everything else that comes with being at home, being on your TV, seeing COVID-19 every 5 seconds. So hopefully that kind of plateaus. Makes some sense and trying to find some balance for the children. Let them use their imaginations and get creative.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll add to the conversation, but yeah, I'm only going to add 2 cents to a $20 million response. So I guess the main thing is you want enjoyment, right? And then Dean's also adding the creativity to it as well. So when you add the creativity, they create ownership to it as well. So if you continue to do that over weeks or months of over a period of time, what you'll actually notice is as soon as it's taken away from them, it's like, where is this gone? And what you're also doing is creating routine and structure for these kids as well. And that's one of the big things that are actually missing at the moment is that consistent routine and structure. And And like Dean said, keep it at those times, keep it consistent, gives them something to look forward to. I think that's probably the biggest thing at the end of the day. It's like when footy training is on at 5:30 at night, you got to be there at 5:30 at night. You're keeping it the same. And as soon as we transition out of this as well, is they've got that understanding of routine and structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and especially when they go into secondary school, it's routine and structure. It's all the same, routine and structure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks for that, Michael. We're going to get Lana. So Lana, if you can hear me, we'll get you unmute yourself, and I'll get you ask you a question.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
G'day, Lana.
Good, yourself?
Yes, not too bad. I've got the terrors with me at the moment.
They're not terrors. I know your boys. They're not terrors.
We had to succumb to Uno. We've been playing a copious amount of Uno. I believe thanks very much for doing this, by the way. I believe my question was in relation to how do you motivate them at all during this time, which has been really, really difficult. So both boys play several different sports, and so we were on a routine of 7 days a week practically of sports. So I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and for them it's just been cold turkey pretty much immediately. But we did try, Hugo, please. We did try to do a lot of online sessions with their sports, and it was absolutely dismal. Probably within the first session or two, they'd given up on it, so they didn't enjoy it, didn't want to do it. So we've spent a very long time now not participating in any sports. Even when we had the couple of weeks in between lockdowns, there was such restrictions with what they could do, and we were a bit concerned, so we didn't take them at all. So I think we've stopped playing any team or individual sports since whatever it was, March. So it's just been terrible. And as a PE teacher, really, really disheartening for our entire family. What do I do?
Dean, you've got the little ones. I'll let you take this one.
Thanks very much. I do think, and hopefully you heard my response to Michael, Lana, I think there is a bit of crossover for your boys as well. But to even start the conversation, it could be as simple as saying, boys, what do you enjoy about your judo, your swimming, your tennis, your cricket? What is it that you love about that game? And from there, you might create some light bulb moments where, again, we're talking about the presence and the visual of the equipment in front of them. I challenge you to create a game and get yourself involved at the same time, which I know your family is a big advocate for physical activity. And from there, you just never know. I think you can branch off, perhaps add some structure to it, but to get them going, plant the seed of the equipment, talk to them about what they love about the game, or what do you miss about the particular game or sport that you play. And that might be a little segue in to try and wean them onto some form of activity throughout the course of the week.
Cool. I'm just going to add to that. I'll add my other 2 cents to it. The one thing I've noticed specifically has been the spike in bike sales. So push bikes have just gone through the roof. And I see Michael nodding right there. And this kind of led me to the idea of potentially you might look at more of like an action sport. So whether it is you want to get your kids learning how to skateboard, whether it's to rollerblade or to ride a bike, spending, go to a basketball court or a netball court and, spending half an hour to an hour of them trying to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z with their skates, with their skateboard, or with their bike. You'll be amazed how much progress they'll actually start to feel. And what that does, it creates their own little buy-in to actually get better at the skill. And because they're quite young as well, they're going to be like sponges, essentially. You're going to be able to kind of do and absorb what's going on and get all the feedback. Or I failed. It's like, all right, probably not going to do that again next time. And they'll be able to really, you're right. You'll be able to, the kids will be able to kind of problem solve in order to get themselves better. They'll that would be another way you could actually look at it, is potentially look at something completely different.
That's great. Thanks, Trent. Thanks, Dean. We yes, we have had the bikes out, but that's been limited to weather, obviously.
Cool. Yeah, obviously weather's going to permit during this time, but even if you just try and keep it structured for 15, 20 minutes, just have a bit of a quick blowout, is going to be more than nothing, essentially. So maybe make it, if they did 7 days a week, maybe just start with, 15 minutes on the bike at a certain time during the middle of the day, if it's possible, with your schedule as well. Then as they get more confident and competent, maybe potentially just kind of move that out as the weather begins to improve as well.
Thank you.
All right, so we've had a few questions. A few people have actually asked questions, and I thought we'd just kind of just go through these as well. And this one was from Fred. Issues around mental health and how to stay connected and motivated. And he's got his kids play basketball, but I thought this was actually a good one, and it's kind of like what Dean harped on before when it comes about the mental health and how to stay connected and motivated. If you want to create that level of kind of like creativity, kind of like what Dean said before, is put all the equipment out. Say you got an hour with all this stuff, then we can come back in later on. And they might sit and stare at it for 10 to 15 minutes, but that's going to get the brain to actually start to work a lot harder, and they'll actually be able to become a lot more creative. Like, what can I do? It's like, they might not play basketball with a basketball, they might do something else with it, but at least it creates that creativity and kind of a small snowball effect that they start to see, put things together and be able to begin to interact with the equipment. What's your take on that, Dean?
No, I couldn't agree more. And again, speaking from experience and what's working at the moment, hopefully that continues with my boys. Even buying a set of dice, physical activity dice from a Kmart, whereby you roll the dice, it might land on 20 squats or 15 lunges, and it almost creates a bit of a challenge within the family about this is what we have to do, and see who can do it in the quickest time or who can execute it in the best possible way. So again, we're only limited by our imaginations in this stressful time as to what we could potentially do to stay connected. And certainly mental health is at the forefront of everything that we as coaches would like to do. And I guess, Percy, from a private coach perspective, my July and August has been booked out, even through lockdown. And obviously we take all the necessary precautions, but people can see the value in me providing, in this example, 3 hours a week to their son or daughter, preparing, executing, and also reviewing their particular program. So right now that's at a premium, and we're happy to be able to assist where we can, should they be interested in football, as it turns out.
Yeah, I think that's another good point as well, as potentially looking at doing it more of a one-on-one route, and maybe get someone who's more like a coach / mentor. This also gives them an outlet to be able to discuss with their potential issues, and that might not be raised within the home environment, that they couldn't potentially bring up because of some uneasiness or uncertainty that might be surrounded by that. So especially with inner athlete, the kind of the way we structured is, the way I like to think of inner athletes like Switzerland. It's like we're not biased towards anything. If you got your own issues, that's fine. But how can we best assist you to be able to move forward? Do we need to potentially, put you onto another service? Do we need to have a potential conversation with parents? Is there anything that we can help assist you in order to move forward with whatever issue that's going on? And it's like, hey, if you want to just kind of sit and just wallow for the next 20 minutes in the office, I'm like, yeah, go ahead, that's fine. You just let me know when you're ready to kind of continue and move or take the next step in terms of getting back out there, trying to get a small win for the day. And I think actually that kind of gave me a really good idea, is if you're feeling down or in the dumps about anything, creating small wins or potential to make small wins throughout the day is actually really important. So for those who haven't heard of Jordan Peterson, it's definitely a powerful book when he talks about the 12 rules for life. And one of his rules is about making your bed before you tackle your day. And that making your bedroom or your bed is actually the small win in itself. Then basically making it small goals or small steps in order to complete is small wins throughout the day. And if you continue to compound those over days, weeks, and months, those goals tend to be a lot larger. So you tend to be a bit more adventurous, but the achievement satisfaction becomes far greater. So you're more likely to venture out and move down the positive route and begin to move up from that negative part up the positive scale. All right. Hopefully that answers that. I kind of wafted on for a sec. Let's move on. So we're going to talk. So Michael, thanks for your question from before. We got a question from Anoka. She actually asked the question when it comes specifically to weight training for kids and or children and teens. And kind of give everyone a bit more context or background, especially we've got a few parents on board, and we've got Mary Toomey. She's an expert in the strength and conditioning sports science world. When it comes to the whole kids training at gyms, it's kind of like it's the insurance at the end of the day that's really holding kids back from actually developing or getting into the gym and actually start lifting weights, is because the insurance policy, most gyms won't pay the extra premium for to have kids there. And kids do need to be supervised at the end of the day. When it comes to kids actually training for the first time, it doesn't, I actually have a rule. If they can listen and take instructions well, that's when they're ready to perform. And if we think about it in terms of like a sport like cricket, and with cricket, right, the bats aren't really light, right? You really got to, use a bit of muscle and force to get that bat moving. So it actually requires a certain level of strength to be able to perform that skill well, but also to be able to repeat that skill again and again and again and again and again. So it's actually really important to actually begin to introduce strength training, but not just strength training specifically, more athlete development, we like to call it, where we work on other aspects of running technique, jumping, landing technique, being able to change your direction, decelerate. So we're really trying to mitigate the likelihood of any injuries that are going to occur in their potential sport. So we know if they've got poor technique, the potential likelihood of them getting injured is going to be a lot higher. Any thoughts on that, Dean?
Oh, look, it's certainly your area of expertise, but even watching your med ball clip today, I believe you released on Inner Athlete, I could see the benefit of terms of, from a cricket side of things, playing particular shots and how training with a med ball can certainly add to your game. That's just something I picked up from today, and how that might be part of our program going forward. Drawing from the strength and conditioning field to be able to not just use a bat to be able to increase your game, but also use different ways of creating those opportunities to get better. Yeah.
And I think a good rule of thumb, if any parents are listening to this after we actually after we've recorded this, is to actually do some research and actually look in the area in terms of like what coaches have had numerous years working with kids within a strength and conditioning setting, not just your PT off the block down at a big Globo box gym. Is to specifically ask questions like, do they have actual experience? Can they provide a little bit of evidence? Is it worthwhile potentially contacting their parents to actually get a recommendation or a testimonial, or even asking other parents as well? It's like, where have they sent their kids to? I see Mary. Let's bring Mary to the conversation. She's actually an expert in this area.
One of the points I'd make is the kids need to be able to do the movement without the weight first, before you add the weight to it.
Yeah.
They've got to have the mobility to be able to do it.
And I think adding to that point is that's where, having someone to teach them who's a strength and conditioning coach with maybe a sports science degree, or has had multiple years working with, hundreds of kids, to be able to teach them how to squat properly, to teach them how to do a push-up properly, to teach them how to plank properly, to teach them to have body awareness. And then we can actually start to introduce some level of load through the body. And what that's going to do is, I believe, and Mary could probably chime in on this point, is if they learn to move well with a full range of motion during this age, or at a young age, the likelihood of having like pain issues whilst they're going through puberty, I reckon it will be a lot lower over time, because they've been able to really stretch and elongate their muscles, get access into those positions. So therefore, the likelihood of them experiencing growth pains, and I experienced it very heavily growing up. I think I was sent to hospital one time because the pain was so excruciating through my lower back. So it's a really good tool to start them off early, but teach them in a very low threshold, very controlled and safe environment. I want to add as well, Mary's background, she's actually will be doing a PhD at Victoria University, and the actual PhD itself is a health promotion framework for when athletes actually enter a professional setting or a high performance setting. And
from the time the talent identified, from the time junior athletes enter a high performance training pathway
until retirement.
Through to retirement.
Yeah, and
spectrum.
And Mary's actually worked at Melbourne Storm. She was the high performance manager for quite a few years. She's up in Brisbane at the moment, and she's worked with the Queensland Academy of Sport. It's just a wealth of knowledge from Mary. So, good on you, Mary. Thanks for your input, Mary.
That's fine.
Cool. All right. What I'm going to do is kind of leave it open to the floor if anyone else has any questions. So what you can do is unmute yourself, and then we can have a bit of a conversation around any other questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap this one up. No. All right. We'll get Dave to jump in on board.
Yeah. So I got 2 questions actually. So I was thinking about so the differences between the delivery of coaching instruction between boys and girls. So especially young boys and young girls. So I know young girls respond to a different type of coaching instruction than compared to boys do. So just wanted to find out your opinion on or your findings on the differences between coaching instruction between boys and girls.
I believe that's more Dean's wheelhouse.
I reckon I could answer that very quickly and succinctly, is that girls and women ask a lot more questions. They don't start the drill until they are sure what is expected of them. Whereas the boys will go to this, I'm talking to VFL over here, we'll go to the back of the queue, we'll let someone else be the fall, and we'll try and catch up from there. Whereas girls are more than happy just to go through the drill and have explained to them what is required. So for me, that's the simple difference. They ask a lot more questions. Is that your experience too, David?
Yeah, I've experienced that boys will like to just jump straight into their words. Girls will ask, will attempt to do it, but make sure they clarify first.
What was your second question, Dave?
Yeah, so the second question was what I was thinking about with the parents. I think it might have been Lana that asked in her scenario, but basically how much emphasis should there be on the parent in terms of like a monkey see, monkey do for the children? So obviously the parents being a role model for the children, if they're not motivated to go and do exercise, would be worth the parent doing something and showing enjoyment of it first to try and entice the kids to do it.
Dean, there's a question for you.
Well, I'd like to get Lana's input. I'm certainly at my kids' recess and lunchtime at the moment. It's a small opportunity for free play, but it could be as simple as something as simple as saying to my 8-year-old now, Oliver, tomorrow at lunchtime, I'm going to challenge you for a 50-metre sprint. That's our deal. That's what we're going for, and something to look forward to. But also the fact that I'm doing it, the kids get a real big smile on their faces, as I did when I was a kid. If my mum and dad were involved in sport, which they always were, luckily for me, I felt like I was safe and I was part of something too that obviously is healthy for you, but they are leading by example, and it's a family activity. Trying to build that connection, and in these uncertain times, I reckon that's a really healthy way to go about it, is to lead by example.
I think that situation as well, it breeds healthy competition. So they learn how to lose. What do I need to do differently next time around? Do I need to jump ahead before he says go or something like that to get the head start? Starts as like this creative problem solving world that they can travel into. But it does teach them to be humble at the end of the day as well. So if they do lose, they take it as a defeat. What do I need to do next time? So they really start to work towards it. So they're not being melancholy. It's like, oh, you're super, you're great and all that. It's like, well, you need that defeat in order to learn. That's where the kids are going to learn and develop. And that's why a lot of programs, especially in youth development pathways, need to be more about the development side. It's not until, 18, 19, 20, it's like, that's when we're competing to win. So it's competing to do well, perform well, then later on down the track, it's competing to win.
And I think with homeschool at the moment, it's imperative that we do break that screen time, TV and technology. The recess and lunchtime window, that it is in fact utilised to be active inside or outside the house. I mean, as a kid, playing football was simply as a case of rolling a pair of socks up, using the doorways, the goals. You're still being active. You're being creative. It doesn't cost anything. You just need to think laterally a little bit to be able to come up with some ideas to engage them, get them moving, get them talking, feeling good about themselves.
Nice. I apologise. I skipped over 2 questions. We had a question from Christopher Reeves, and he's basically asking the best way to reintroduce load. And his kids play AFL and basketball, and he is an osteo by trade. And one thing when it comes to reintroducing load, if they've done literally nothing, is you could basically what they've done is probably just half that. And so if they're used to playing for an hour, just half that to 30 minutes, just to kind of really undershoot. So you'd rather undershoot by a mile than, overshoot by an inch, and potential issues do pop up. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is actually, if they're used to playing sport over, maybe 8 hours, maybe chop that down to 4 hours. So if they're doing that over a week, and actually just sprinkle it at different times of the day. So recess, lunch, after school, you're better off kind of sprinkling it out throughout the day, or even or over multiple days, rather than trying to lump it in as a 2 or 3 hour session. And probably the last thing is just make it enjoyable. Because as soon as you're returning back to something, people go to things because they enjoy something specifically. So you want to make sure that there's a level of enjoyment, there's a level of fun, there's some level of competition at the end of the day, and that's going to help spur to get them back into whatever sport it may be. Then you can start really building up on the skills after that. What are your thoughts around that, Dean?
Look, again, I'd refer to the chunk, block and tackle philosophy. Let's dilute what they have been doing in a structured format, and let's look to get something out of it. That's essentially what I'm working off at the moment, is to heavily dilute it and make sure that it is enjoyable, make sure they're a part of the creating process to get through these times.
Nice. And the last one is probably the best one, actually. How do we keep kids interested without being pushy parents? Dean, I'll let you start this one off.
Wow, it's not easy, and it doesn't always work. Number one, I think just to stay calm, and try and wean them onto whatever it might be. Whatever, if it's a walk around the block. My kids are big advocates. They do about a 5K scooter ride every lunchtime. That's kind of their go-to, and that's fine. It's not cricket, it's not footy, and that's completely okay as long as you're doing something and you're enjoying it and you're doing it together, and Dad will run along behind. Again, leading by example and getting creative, and actually giving them, again, that autonomy to take ownership of, this was my idea, and now they're all doing it together as a family or as a couple of brothers or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think the monkey see, monkey do thing does work. It does work majority of the time. So if you start, kicking the footy by yourself outside, it's okay, come out and have a kick of the footy. They'll probably say no. You start kicking to yourself a few more times, and it's like, then you kick it to them. It goes out in front. Then then they're more likely to get involved that way. Then track. So kind of like pushing up from that idea, we're trying to keep kids on track. How do we keep teens on track? Now, teens are probably a different beast at the end of the day, males and female differences. Probably the one thing that it comes to keeping teens on track is actually having some level of objective, but also having some level of ownership for them. So allowing them to actually have some ownership on what they're actually doing. So we actually got Josh Chapman. He's a 17-year-old rugby player. And when it comes to the training for him, he's actually very, very much self-driven at the end of the day. He knows that there's a bigger goal than just the next 6 weeks of being locked up. So for him, it's actually quite easy, but how do we do it for the other kids as well that are on their computers and on their phones all the time? That actually becomes another problem within itself. So, Dean, you got any ideas on how to get kids out of being hermits or teens specifically?
Not specifically, but I mean, again, I'll just go over the fact that let them create the agenda. Capture their imagination. You know, that coffee you're making can wait. If they've got an idea, run with it, because you might not get that time back again. It might be that window of 15 minutes that satisfies them for the day. It means you can get back to you're working from home. They can go back into working with their schoolwork from home. It just snippets and windows we just have to make the most of. Myself, if I need to take a 5-minute break because they're onto something, so be it. We just have to adjust, pivot, as you mentioned before, and that's probably, for me, the best way to describe it. Be flexible.
So that's good. It's probably like when you go fishing. It's right. You cast it. You probably see it dink a little bit in the water, the rod and the tip of the head, and you don't sit there for another 10 minutes and then try and pull it up because your bait's gone. So it kind of strike whilst the iron's hot with kids, and potentially finding something that they've done in the past that they really enjoy. It could be something as if they have a push bike, you could just literally go for a bike ride or with them or something like that. Like Dean said, just make them more accountable. So we'll finish this conversation up, but first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's actually come on board for tonight. I also thank you for your questions as well, and thank you for your input. This was the first time we've ever done something like this, and I know Dean and I had some discussions around this, and we was like, yep, let's just go gung-ho and see how it goes. And to be personally honest, and I'll get Dean's input in a sec, it's actually been really good to get some input from different people and be able to provide some value to the community. And that was our main objective here, is to be able to provide value to the community so that, we can provide a good, knowledge, value, whatever you want to call it. So then everyone can actually begin to move out and transition out of this. And we're moving the attention away from the negative agenda of what the media is promoting, and we're trying to instill some level of positivity or hope or change within this.
Very true. And look, we provided some online cricket programs back in about March, but based on Lana's example, that's probably a bit of homework for me as to how else can we engage our young people to assist the parents navigating these uncertain times. So for me, I've got some homework to do, and certainly that includes Michael and Lana's children to make sure that they are okay, and how can we create ways to get them to enjoy the sport, make sure they're active, and certainly have that habit as part of their week, if it's 15 minutes or whatever the case may be.
Cool. So what I'm doing at the moment, I'm actually just putting links to our Athlete Facebook page. I'm also going to put a link to Dean on one-on-one football. So if anyone is interested in actually following up on Dean's one-on-one football, please check it out. He's doing some really good stuff within the community, and it's actually evident because he got Sportsperson of the Year in the Greater Dandenong area. For us, if you did find this webinar of value, please leave us a review on our Facebook page. This really does help us, and also helps to promote us within the community as well, that we're really trying to do something and make a greater change for the long term. I think that's the biggest thing here. Everything's just short term at the moment. We're trying to make some bigger changes for the long term. Other than that, I'll wrap it up. I'll let everyone get to it. Enjoy your teas, and I hope to see everyone soon, but please leave a review and check out Dean's stuff, and I'll hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely to see some of you for the first time. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Cheers. Have a good one.